chair of the art department. Sean is. As well as Marissa Pascucci, our gallery collection coordinator somewhere, and David Sackett, the department technician. So Tyler Starr earned his Bachelor of Arts from the University of Connecticut Stores and his Master of Fine Arts from the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis, and then a PhD in Studio Arts from the Tokyo University of Fine Arts in Japan, where he was a recipient of the Japanese Ministry of Education Scholarship. Prior to his PhD studies, he was awarded a Fulbright Scholarship to study at the Academy of Fine Arts in Poland. He was also a Grant Wood Fellow at the University of Iowa, a Christiana researcher in residence, and also received a fellowship at the Cullum Art Institute. His work has been featured in numerous exhibitions, and we're really excited to show his new works here and be part of that process. So let's turn it over to you.
I feel a little isolated, so feel free to come a little bit closer if you'd like. First of all, I'd like to thank the gallery, the Inhuman, of course, Marissa and David helping me to hang all this stuff so it's presentable. So thank you very much, as always, for that. I thought what I would do is just, I want to have time for questions because this work deserves some difficult questions and me trying to answer them and think and process them. So I want to obviously leave time for that and hear from you all. But to start things off, what I thought I would do is try to connect some of these very, can you hear me by the way? I feel like I'm yelling, but make sure you hear me. I feel like some of the work was compartmentalized when I made it. Slightly disparate bodies of work, sometimes encapsulated in book form. So the books themselves being somewhat humble little boxes of this information I collected, and sometimes over many years. It was like 2 years for this January 6th work, and then it fits, on this tiny little table, and it seems like I need to unpack it a little bit. So anyway, a wonderful opportunity. To see the work in relationship to each other, I started to see little strings, little threads that led through this work. And that's what I would like to try to point out to you. And maybe that would lead to some questions, some maybe even challenges for the way I decided to do this work, which I do see as problematic. A lot, death, January 6th, executive orders, all problematic subjects that somehow I tend to wallow in. Over here, so I kind of walked my way through. So that room over there starts off with a little book about the Aryan Republican Army, which was an organization, you could call it that. It's basically two individuals that were really the center of their bank robbing activities. They robbed over 22 banks in the 90s. This is like 97 we're talking, so not like ancient history. When I first came to North Carolina to dig into the history, I learned about the Greensboro Massacre of 1979, another case of white supremacist violence, which seemed a little more distant. I was born in 74, so 79. But then I came across this incident in 1997, so that felt like, well, that seems like pretty recent. The way I start to investigate these cases start off very selfishly in the sense I'm just trying to understand this. So it's a matter of archival research, digging into FBI files, for example, is primarily what I did for that project. A lot of boring text and teletypes. My strategy, because I'm visual and have a problematic memory, I will try to translate that text into images that I understand. So it's small components, this kind of micro element of like, he used this gun for this bank robbery at this location. When he was arrested, he had these boxes of books in the back of his car. When they went to this bank, they had these masks. A Ross Perot mask was one of the ones they chose. Actually influenced by that movie. There was that movie where they were robbing banks, and they were actually influenced by the Hollywood movie, kind of riffing on that, for example. So anyway, like this way of trying to understand these complex subjects, for me, has been taking these little micro elements and then seeing how they kind of expand constellation-like into a more macro, bigger than itself kind of situation, subject, or actions in this case. So something that started to happen in that case, looking at that, I mentioned it was 97, so a little bit pre-internet time period. So again, instead of like a digital record, he had the boxes of cardboard books, cardboard boxes full of books in his pickup truck when he gets arrested. So if you notice in that book, the cover kind of opens up. It's kind of hidden. I think it can be overlooked sometimes. But if you have a chance, pull it open. And the idea is the book cover itself opens up, revealing the covers, which I could find on eBay, of these books that were used for evidence when they were arrested. So you can kind of trace some of their thinking and inspiration, including an interest in guerrilla warfare, communist organizations, and then also like home weapon making, like how to make dynamite at home, like that kind of stuff. But one of the books that was of an interest, and maybe you've heard of it, and it's sort of a toxic reference, but like I just have to lay it out there. It's called the Turner Diaries, which is a white supremacist work of fiction. And basically it's presenting in a somewhat comic-y way, comic booky fiction. It presents a kind of a roadmap for initiating violence that would be, you'd call it sort of accelerationist. You'd inspire sort of an apocalyptic race war. So I looked through this book because we happen to have it in our library collection, which was a useful reference. So if you need it back, it is up in my office right now. And it would be interesting to study that history. And I've had it for like 3 years now, so I've studied it. But I still check it out. So. But so one of the cases in there that he's presenting as like a method of generating a white nationalist sort of government situation is this day called Day of the Rope. And Day of the Rope in this book is when they go out and anyone that's considered a race traitor would be hung publicly. Obviously, horrid and violent and terrible. And there's a special place for teachers, specifically UCLA professors, which are strung up in groups of 4 on the lampposts. And so that there's this horrible element of death and violence as a way to generate this white nationalist situation that they are aiming for. There's overlaps with Timothy McVeigh. There's a theory that they were raising money and sliding it over to Timothy McVeigh to support his bombing of the Oklahoma City government building. And Timothy McVeigh left 2 pages from the Turner Diaries in one of his getaway vehicles. So there's this trace of this horrible book floating around. And then when January 6th came along, there were references to the Day of the Rope as it was leading up to the protest at the Capitol, talking about they're going to get revenge, for example. And I'm talking about the subset of participants who subscribe to this white nationalist objective. So I started to kind of come across that information. Then January 6th came, of course. Seeing it on the screen was a very different experience from reading FBI teletypes, which felt a little more removed. So it was a very different experience to see it, sort of live action, or on the radio as well. So it was sort of a more visceral experience from some of the previous subjects I had been looking at. And there's lots of gallow imagery that they erected. They actually physically erected gallows. There's lots of images of gallows, or rather nooses, and who they were going to kill for being traitors. So I was seeing this cross-reference to this previous white nationalist organization. You can see traces of it apparent in the flags and homemade placards. And then as more and more of the social media, the writings and Reddits and stuff, that became kind of collected and academically analyzed, and lots of associations with this darn book the Turner diaries. So again, this like small component, Trojan horse like kind of opens up and has this horrible thread that's continuing into the present. So this kind of work with the second one, where it's more about the climbers, using some strategies that I used for the first book, and then you see I have a little bit of a tricky oblique kind of way to approach a horrible damn subject. And it's a way to maybe avoid confrontational, because if you know me, probably I'm not super confrontational, kind of like go that way. And it's apparent in sort of the visual strategies that I'm using. Like it would be easy to pull out footage of the individuals that were, violently hitting the Capitol security, for example. And I thought there were elements of, possibly glorifying the violence in some, very unhelpful way. So that's why after hours of watching the footage, because that's another kind of reference point that I would like to acknowledge, is that these citizen archival sites where they were collecting the social media feeds and cell phone footage and things like that from participants or also from security cameras, and they would geolocate it, and they would have the Capitol grounds, and you could click on like a little bubble and it would show you footage from that incident, and they had a timeline, you could see exactly what time. So I was able to start to wade through like all this depressing stuff with the sound off, because the sound on, I was going nuts. Like when you hear the thing, these horrid things that the participants were saying, that was sort of overwhelming. But if I could just focus on visuals, I felt like I might be able to pull apart some, rhythms or some structures that were involved with this event that might offer some insights into, at least for me, some insights into motivations. Immediately I saw the complexity to it. Maybe I had a really simplified understanding of maybe motivations behind it, maybe very much influenced by that previous work I did with the white supremacist organizations. And I start to see everything from Polish flags and Japanese flags even, Vietnam flags, and you start to see, there's like an anti-communist contingent, and then you start to see, there's like this very, very strong extremist religious component, and it was evident not only in the flags, but in these homemade placards. So it was a bit of pulling out these little elements again that seem to relate to something much bigger. So this micro and macro thing keeps like sort of popping up, it seems, in my work. So it was also a nice opportunity. Again, sometimes it's sad spending all that time and then, this is what I have, a little book. So to have this opportunity with a wall and to kind of pull it out, like I made a little diorama, for that book that, hey, it's not just a book, there's like some sculptural elements or something. But then I get to paint it on the wall, so it becomes much more theatrical, which is another thing I'm interested in, just theater and stage and gestures. And maybe it offers some interesting insight into the individuals that are participating, and something about just being human too, as they like help each other over these walls, and it looks like they haven't climbed any walls before, so it's hard work. So there's like that little element to it. And again, initially selfishly, just let me try to make sense of it, and then maybe clean it up so it's somewhat presentable, and maybe offer some entry points for others to investigate and consider. So that's that kind of sad body of work out there. What happened is I also started to, again, kind of tying into that Turner diary, this idea of death. There's a lot of death. Murder, death, dying, being willing to die, kill in order to accomplish something. Like lots of that kind of stuff was going on over there. And I'm like, yeah, little me, what do I know about death? Like I still don't even I have trouble wrapping my head around the war in Ukraine, let alone the tragedies that are happening right now in Gaza, and there's just death everywhere. And there's little me. Maybe I'll look at the earliest memories I have of death. I'm 50 now. It's time to like address things, like look around, like think about stuff. I'm 50. I do think about my sister passed away 4 years ago when she was 50. So it's like this little milestone. She had from breast cancer. I mentioned it somewhere. But like there's this kind of a milestone. Like okay, let's look around. And what the heck do I know about death? Nothing as drastic as those other tragic situations I was talking about. But everyone has to deal with it one way or another. So that's how this series came about. So it's a little more kind of grounded, I think, and experiences. This first story is the oldest story I can remember about death, and it's presented in this comic book format. I'm not really a gallery kind of person. I'm more like carry a piece of paper home and appreciate it on my chair, as opposed to fancy places where it's presented. That's why it's also in that little like takeaway comic book format. Again, humble, but maybe a Trojan horse in a weird way. But anyway, here, it was a story in Connecticut about a guy with a muscle car, and it was a gas station near our house that we drive by, and then that's where the guy got squished. That's where the car supposedly, and I didn't witness this, but this is how I imagine it likely happened. It rolled and squished him here. So I figured there must be some lessons in there, because that's the earliest memory of death. I'm still trying to figure it out, but again, using visuals to kind of walk my way through it. And, I don't know, there's probably something there about humility, something. And then it kind of continues. Here's the second story, which kind of proceeds over there. The yellow car is supposed to continue over there. My children are here. They pose for me. They're important characters over here. And this is the second earliest memory I could come across. So again, not a horrible, tragic thing, like very fortunate that way for me, but it's still like, oh, this is an aspect of death that I remember. And it's in Ohio, going to the Lazarus department store in a sprawling mall where they had a frozen Bigfoot who someone had supposedly shot and encased in ice. And you pay like, my parents paid a couple bucks. This is probably '79. And I remember the booklet I got from that, treasured this strange booklet with photos of, you can't see it clearly, but his face is like under the ice, and he's clearly dead. He's got probably a hole in his chest or something along those lines. And like now, as an older person's like, why did you have to shoot it? Well, maybe there was another way to interact with Bigfoot, like we were just got to shoot him and get some money off of him by freezing the poor guy. I did find out, there's a little clue, like it says, they're like, hey, creature on ice. I think it's a second version of the Minnesota Iceman, because I was like, I have a questionable memory, I'll admit to that. But yeah, I think it's like a knockoff from the Minnesota Iceman, which was, there too, they say there's an original one who got replaced when the FBI said you can't have cadavers, dragging them around to public places. So they got rid of that, supposedly made a concrete one, which you can see in Austin, Texas at like some weird, it's like a weird carnival museum or something. I suspect I saw something like that. But yeah, this idea of death was what I was exploring here. There's a little play here, Miki and I once, my spouse, we saw like a monkey, and then it had a bag as if it was shopping at the grocery store. And then the next page is the one over there, where it's like the peaceful Japanese sculptor, a friend of ours who made like that hand. He was commissioned by a pachinko parlor to create like a Buddhist hand kind of thing, funny guy. And I was like, cross-reference monkey, human, monkey in a jar, the head, which was another place in Japan where there was an old, based off Chinese medicinal shop. And in the window, I always thought it was very dramatic to see this macaw's head, the snow monkey head, because apparently they burn the bones into a sumi and powder it, and it's a form of medicine of some kind. So I had this kind of view of death and human destruction and those kinds of things. Just to finish off, so on a happy note, I suppose. Over here, it kind of involves, so there's a couple of newer works there. There's like the big color ones with bugs. And when we go to Japan in a mountainous area that looks a little bit like that, I spent time and was paying Kai, my son, like a couple bucks to find insects, which I photographed with a macro lens. And just the structure and colors and just incredible, probably often overlooked creatures. And yet so critical. So again, it's like, so getting macro, micro, like really small things, and then comparing it to these really big things in the sense like, here's me, woe's me, mortality. And then what I was reading about bugs, because why am I so interested in them? Apparently, if you get rid of these little annoying bugs, right, the whole ecosystem on planet Earth falls apart, right? Like, that's just what I've read. If you think of pollination, and the animals eat the bugs, and then the animals that eat the animals eat the bugs, like all that, everything just falls apart. And then comparing that with my understanding of Chernobyl, where you get rid of people from a place and everything thrives. It's wonderful. And so there's this little element of humility there too. It's like, so what is our place? And so that's why I was kind of pairing, I thought it was a good opportunity because there's a big wall back there. So I always want to show this little bug with a big architecture and compare the two, because I think the bug frame, I don't know if there's some architect friends here, because I have a couple, but I'm more interested in the bug. In the buildings, there's a lot of praxis, there's a lot of compromise, so built like that's not, that beautiful. But the bug is like fantastic. So I wanted to compare this little thing with a big thing. And that's how I kind of saw it relating to some of the works there. It's like this little thing, and then it accumulates into this big thing, this big matter. So that's kind of what started to happen over there. And just to finish up, because I talked too long and get like a little question, there was this idea of, well, it's an election cycle, and one little vote is little, right? But it can have incredible impacts and repercussions and things like that. So maybe it's something to take heart when we look at the little green bugs that are over there. It's like a little thing, but the impact could be really big and important and consequential. So maybe that's just what I'll end on. But I would like to hear questions or comments because I need them, because I know there's some problematic aspects of all of this. So if you could open up to any comments too, appreciate it. Let alone questions, I'll try to do what I can. Yeah.
What is the clutch? What is this?
Oh yeah. So yeah, it's a good question. And I saw it a couple different ways. Like you're in a clutch, in that sense. Like you're in a bind is how I kind of understood that. But then it came to mind too because I heard that sometimes if you don't. In the old stick shift, if you don't have the clutch enacted, that sometimes that's problematic for rolling. So I saw it on a couple levels, and I thought maybe if you had the clutch in, I wouldn't hear this damn story about the poor guy getting crushed by his muscle car. But is that true for those of you who know how clutch functions? It's better to put the clutch in, right? It's a little bit safer. But that was the train of thought. Yeah.
So you're talking about white nationalism, white supremacy, death, but the way you're talking is so full of comedy and humor. So, like, what is the role of humor or comedy in your work?
Right. Coping mechanism is what I understand. It's a way to deal with it, and I do really appreciate deadpan humor. And from what I understand, in horrible situations, it's a way to survive, to not completely break down. So I think there's an element of that, and I hope it gives me strength. But I haven't been, in a trial like a horrible situation. For example, someone in Gaza right now. What are they experiencing? How do they cope with it? But it seems like even when you look at these horrible things, like for example, I have high school students in here today, and they were in a social justice class. And it was really interesting to hear them talk about that room over there. And one was pointing out this one individual whose pants are falling down in the corner, where it's a tragic situation. So much sympathy for the Capitol security, for example, that were getting physically attacked. But people are strange and peculiar and interesting. And even when you're doing something awful, like I wonder or complex, like just, I'm curious what people look like during the Boston Massacre. Like what an incredible event, so consequential, but maybe their pants didn't fit. And that's part of being human too. So I think there's a humanizing element that for me starts to happen out there a little bit, because I can sympathize. I have not climbed walls successfully lately, so what would it look like trying to do that? So that, I would say, is like that's kind of micro element, but then you look at what they were trying to accomplish, and that's like a whole, another consideration almost. So those are some of the things that I think about. I think it could be problematic too, though. So like all this stuff I kind of question too, like it doesn't make it less serious. Should it be treated with a much more kind of grave way, in a more serious kind of way. So those are open questions. It's just sort of my peculiarities and character flaws, probably. Sort of. Yeah.
I'm really interested in the fact that like comics are often seen as like a very youthful medium, and I wanted to hear a little bit about how you can kind of like co-opt that to tell these more like mature, kind of darker stories.
Yeah, I think if you look now, you can find a lot of, like Fantagraphics is an interesting publisher, and in Canada it would be Drawn and Quarterly. They definitely have a more sort of fine art slant on pictorial storytelling. So you can find more sort of painterly, literature-based approaches to the medium now than maybe the go-to association, which would be like Marvel Comics or like something like that. So that business still seems to be thriving with the movie industry as well. But I think you can find more and more artists that cross the lines. Trenton Doyle Hancock being another fascinating painter that I always bring him up in class, so I feel like but look at him again, who maybe would approach it. He has made little comic books, but I think his large, almost like mural-like installations still play off this idea of storytelling and almost like myth-making and a playful visualization of a storyline or something like that. So I think you can break easily. There's lots of artists that break out of that. Yeah.
So on that storytelling line, so much of this art does tell stories individually and sequentially. Some of it includes words, some doesn't. So when do words help you as an artist tell a story, and when do they become like problematic little creatures that are trying to take over?
Yeah, I don't know.
How do you get the balance?
Yeah, you can see here I shied away from it completely.
Yeah.
Partly being self-conscious about writing. And also I'm someone that even when I was buying like Marvel comics, I was always disappointed by what was written, and I was definitely just looking at the pictures and going through the pictures. And I felt like I got enough. And I didn't need all that backstory kind of stuff. But I am, this is supposed to be kind of the first stab at this pictorial way of working. I have the next ideas in mind, and I suspect there might be a little more complicated context that would benefit from some writing and less drawing. So it's something I'm still working on, and I would say I'm also nervous about the writing part. I definitely feel a little more at home visualizing it, so it might be safer territory, frankly. I feel like I know, composition is good or bad. But the writing stuff I still feel nervous about, so I'm definitely minimizing.
But what about the letters?
Oh, like that? Well, see, I do that a lot there too, like the FBI works over there, where if someone else wrote it, I don't have a problem taking it. So that's like a different story. In that case, I feel like I don't have to say anything, look what he said, and that's enough. And there it got long. Like that was something in the previous ones. I was trying to convince like who's patient and like this isn't a novel. Like you just want the fact and like move on to the next thing. There I felt like you really needed to see the whole thing. And there's a little editing. Mostly it's the whole thing. And I do see people walk up to it. I wonder who's patient enough to kind of read all that. But there I felt like, yeah, just the actual text from that, subject, that situation. Just needed to be present. But I didn't want my hands to be evident so much. That was like someone else's voice. I like that. I'll steal someone else's writing anytime. Oh, cool. I should take a photo. Kind of $5 to pick it up. Yeah, great.
I'm curious about the sequence of things here. So, and just wondering about the choices in the order of hanging, because I was like, it looks like the guy getting squished by the car goes left to right. Like that's the culminating frame there. But then I was looking at the bird. The bird is dead here, but it's alive there. So the things are. It's going in opposite directions. So I wonder, what's going on with that choice.
It's playful. So that's part of it. But in the book, it's presented not in that order. Like for example, that guy with the hand is supposed to be next to the monkey. So you see monkey, guy with hand, monkey head is the proper order for that one. Like one, Yeah, monkey plus man equals monkey head. And then here, it was a little joke. Here's like they call it like the splash page, and it's supposed to sort of be a premonition almost of like what is to come, is what I was thinking. So the little bird being, well, it's supposed to be a falcon, which is supposed to be this one, which is getting harassed. It's like the muscle car, getting harassed by little dachshunds or something. And then that's supposed to mimic this guy with his muscle car who dies. And then maybe something similar happened to the falcon in that process. So falcon standing in for, that was the thinking, if it came across or not. But that was the thought process. Oh yeah. Yeah, is there any, oh yeah, this has been a long time. So I would be happy to mingle, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer. Just here also, really interested.
About your creative process, was there a moment when you didn't wake up in the morning and get right back in this process that you took a break, or was the next one already overlapping?
That's kind of interesting, yeah. It's a good
Sure,
question.
morning like going and here's what I have to do.
The way I work starts off with a little sketchbook in quick paintings that kind of map out the story, and then it's kind of like execution of the story in what I consider more sort of finished, resolved, edited kinds of versions of it. So I kind of had it mapped out, and it was a matter of working my way through. Exactly. That's it.
And then you got to the end before you already started your next one. While you were
Yeah, I have I'm very slow. I'm very slow. So the next stories are kind of lined up, and I need another sabbatical in order to.